Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Randy Reid. I'm the editor and publisher of the Edison Report. Today, I have the honor of once again moderating the annual Lighting Forum sponsored by the National Lighting Bureau and co-sponsored by the Edison Report and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW, which so graciously lends us its production facilities and personnel to help make this event so special every year. The panel I'm about to convene will focus on human-centric lighting, and it's a delight to have three such highly regarded experts to give us guidance. They are Mark Lien, Industry Relations Manager of the Illuminating Engineering Society, Michael Barber, a principal with the lighting practice, and Craig Casey, a senior building science engineer with Lutron Electronics. Gentlemen, welcome. And Mike, the first question goes to you. What is human-centric lighting?
Good lighting design is inherently human-centric, that we design lighting systems for humans, and the crafting of architectural space. So, but with current technological developments and a lot of the research that's gone on, say over the last, say 10, 12 years, I think it's taken a different meaning, that now we can, that light, the properties of light, specifically natural light, can affect our sleep cycles, circadian rhythms, alertness, those sorts of non-visual responses.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important, as you stated, that lighting design inherently, as you said, is about people, and people, from a lighting design perspective, have always been the focus of design. And so, you know, from a daylight perspective, from an electric light perspective, all of that's still important. We just have new technology. We have new abilities and new things to think about to be able to still create the right environment for people in the space.
Mark, tell our audience a little bit about the biophilia hypothesis.
Sure. So that originated in 1984 from Edmund O. Wilson, and he wrote a book called Biophilia. There have been several books since, but Wilson's basic premise is that it's the urge to affiliate with other forms of life. So that's what biophilia is, and he goes on in the book to talk about the different effects that are caused. Example being a window that you're looking out of, that if you've got a window in your office, your blood pressure is typically a little bit lower than it would be otherwise because you have this connection to nature and to the outdoors. And what Wilson believes, and he's still with us, brilliant man, what he believes is that we inherently have that need to be connected and that there are physical responses associated with it.
So how does biophilia play a role with human-centric lighting?
Well, biophilic design, it really, I go to quite a few conferences, but the one that talks about this the most is the USGBC, that writes the LEED standard. So the U.S. Green Building Council holds specific sessions on biophilic design. How do we design a building so that it better connects us to nature? Buildings have tended to isolate us, and certainly with lighting, that's a key issue. But there's other aspects of biophilic design as well.
What we're seeing from an architectural design perspective is in healthcare, the creation of wellness gardens, or this creation of outdoor space attached to a building, that we're again in healthcare allowing patients to make that connection, to make that physical connection, and even from say a corporate environment perspective. The idea of outdoor amenity spaces to encourage workers to be able to go outside and just get out of their seats and just be in nature.
So would you say the well-being standard is the definitive guide to human-centric lighting?
Do you want to do it? Well
glad to
is
take that.
well. From a lighting designer's perspective, it is not the definitive guide. I am very appreciative of the work that's gone in and the work that continues to go into well. It is an evolving process. Some of the preconditions and the optimizations are fairly well grounded. However, the circadian lighting optimization, as we've been talking here, because it's based on research that's ongoing, it will continue to evolve. So not necessarily a definitive standard, but certainly, I think more importantly, hopefully getting lighting professionals at the table.
Yeah, version 2, I'd agree with that, Michael. And version 2 was released recently. It was a significant improvement over version 1. But to Michael's point, this is evolving in terms of research and the effects of light on health. And the feeling at WELL, and I've met with people from WELL Building, my organization at the IES had an opportunity to look at version 2 briefly before it was published. They feel that they need to take what information they have now and move forward with it, even though it's an evolving concern. So definitive, no. But will it be good for designers and for buildings? I think so, but it's evolving as well.
Please.
Yeah, I think that it's important to think more than just the circadian aspect of human-centric lighting. I mean, I'll support the IS in the statement that the IS has a variety of recommended practices and other guides that you can follow as good design. So WELL is one standard. The IS has many standards that people can use today.
Okay, so you said version 2 of the WELL, and you said they released it. Who is they? Who
Oh.
writes the WELL building standard?
Well, it's Delos is the parent group, but what I find really interesting is that the chief executive officer of WELL is Rick Fedrizzi, who also ran the USGBC. So, in a sense,
You mentioned Delos is the parent?
yes.
I'm not familiar with that organization. That's a 501c3, a nonprofit?
Background for that organization,
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I think if you Googled DELOS, you would certainly get the background you need.
Okay, and so they have a committee that writes the well-being standard.
They have a subgroup under Delos, and to the extent of their structure, I have not been exposed to that. I don't know.
Okay. Explain to our audience a little bit about Melanopic Lux. What is that?
If you're just looking for a specific definition, it's light measured at eye level using weighting factors of the specific light source being used. It is the calculated value of the non-visual reception of light or response to light.
Well, Craig, what's your thought about Melanopic Lux?
I think Melanopic Lux is one way that people are trying to quantify the effect of the circadian system in the body. So Melanopic Lux is a way, as was stated, that it's a multiplier on the lux level, and it's supposed to quantify the melanopsin response in the IPRGC,
Okay,
or the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cell.
very good. Is Melanopic Lux a good metric for human-centric lighting?
It's an initial metric. It has value. It came from a paper that was written, some of the collaborators, Lucas, Lockley, Brainerd, Figueroa, very prestigious, intelligent, people that worked to come up with this metric, also referred to as EML in the WELL building. In the paper, however, it specified that there were multiple photosensors and they were just focused on one, but there were others. Okay. So since that came out, an alternative to it has evolved, the CS metric, that the Lighting Research Center has developed that looks at some of the impact of these other sensors. And there is some debate in the industry right now as to which is going to be the most valuable.
Okay.
But you could have two metrics and as alternatives. And from what I've heard recently, although I've not seen this in print, I've heard that well building under the new version will accept CS as an alternate to EML.
Okay.
Yeah,
Craig?
so I think that what we have right now is we have EML, Equivalent Melanopic Lux, and we have CS, or Circadian Stimulus. And at this point, I don't know whether or not the research is there to define which one is better. So I think we're still in kind of a wait-and-see kind of game at this point.
Okay. How does human-centric lighting relate to human-centric design?
I'll kick it off. I
Please.
think that when I think about human-centric design, I think about the entire part of that design community, whether it's the architect, the mechanical designer, the lighting designer. I think it's the whole team. And when I just think about human-centric lighting, I'm really thinking about the specific things that a lighting designer can do to create an environment that is geared towards the people.
In the architecture and interior design community, the terminology that they're using is human-centered design, where as Craig had pointed out, it's architects and interior designers working a lot more closely with the owners, for the occupants of the space, to understand how they work and to design architectural systems, and even how they program the space, how the space functions. That's human-centered design, again, from an architectural perspective. And to Craig's point, human-centric lighting is a piece of that, but it doesn't necessarily relate to the architectural design. Good design always relates to the architecture.
Sure.
Michael, good design, though, should be informed by science. And hopefully whether we want to call it human-centric lighting, not a term that I necessarily endorse, or something broader like light and health, it should be informing the design practices. And this is another evolution right now, because we are still learning about our vision. And there's so much yet to learn. And there's a subjective nature of this. Individual metabolisms respond differently. So how do we allow for those? How do we find general principles that could impact design? It's a process, and we're early in that process.
So if human-centric lighting isn't a term you don't like, is there one that you'd prefer?
It's odd. One of the committees that I'm on reviewed a list of about 16 different names.
Okay.
None of them seemed to really be inclusive of all of the aspects of this. It's not just about circadian lighting, which most people think light and health is. There's other aspects to how light affects us. Light and health, to me, is the broadest term. I just tend to refer to it that way. I'm okay if somebody says human-centric. I belong to the Human Centric Lighting Society. That's fine. But I tend to think that a broader term is more inclusive of some of the other aspects.
I did not know there's a Human-Centric Lighting Society.
Yes, there is. And it's actually, they have a newsletter that comes out regularly, and it's a very well-informed group.
Mike?
We've tossed around the term physiological lighting, or human physiological lighting.
Okay. Are there certain technologies that work better with human-centric lighting?
Well, it is a specific technology, right? So current LED, the makeup of current LEDs and the spectral power of, we'll say, standard LED product is that it is not necessarily responsive to those non-visual responses, the more physiological responses.
Please.
Yeah, I think that this all goes back to how we define human-centric lighting, right? Yeah. So from that aspect, then spectrum is one of the most important pieces, right? Or one of the most important pieces. But if we talk about human-centric lighting from the standpoint of creating a sense of space, right? Designing the layer of lighting, designing the scenes for lighting so that way people can appreciate being in the space. Or we talk about daylight and having access to views or trying to mitigate glare. All of those things I think are important in human-centric lighting. And there are technologies that support that. Great dimming, right? That's a great one. Automated shading can provide things like that. So it depends what aspect of human-centric lighting you're asking about.
Yeah, solid state lighting and IoT, they have the ability to improve our lives through their effect on human health if we have the will to implement them. And that's been somewhat of an issue. And how broad is this topic? Well, what about horticulture? Is that light and health? Does this affect your health? How you grow the food? We can use solid state lighting, for example, to change the nutritional characteristics of the food that we eat. To me, it's a stretch, but it's kind of
Right,
light
no,
and
I see
health.
that.
So the Lighting Research Center and LISA, the Lighting Enabled Systems and Application Lab, both have plant scientists on staff that are working in this area to make plants better for people through light. So is that light and health? Yeah, there's a time of flight sensor, for example, that they have been working with at the LISA facility at RPI that detects, it's built into light fixtures, and it detects falls. So if someone falls to the ground, the lights could turn red or a signal could go off to the security personnel or the receptionist that somebody's down in that room. Is that light and health? It's certainly a technology, a time of flight sensor. They're built into our phones. This is a variation on that. But I would argue that that's light and health as well, and that's a technology.
So I understand. It's all encompassing. I mean, it can touch almost anything we do.
Seems that way.
Light. Regarding human-centric lighting for shift workers, is alertness and productivity the main goal?
Yes. Not that it should be, but because those can be defined financially, they're tangible, I'd say yes. And there was a product on the market about 10 years ago. I won't name the company, but they built a software that went onto corporate servers that if somebody logged into their computer, say at 10 o'clock at night, it knew their schedule because that was in the server. They were going to be working till 6 a.m. It would ramp up the lights so that at about 3 a.m. they were at their brightest point, probably much brighter than normal recommended levels, to keep them alert and productive. And then they would ramp down slowly until they were ready to leave at 6 o'clock and go home when they suggested they wear sunglasses, go home and get a good night's sleep, right? So it was not for health reasons, it was for productivity, which is what drives a lot of this. However, for shift work, I mean, if you think of the studies that Harvard did with night shift nurses, there are very critical health implications. What the problem is we need to make those tangible financially in order to change the mindset from just alertness and productivity.
Please.
It is interesting that you brought up a nursing study, because my wife is a nurse and had worked late shifts. And from a human-centric perspective, being sensitive to their needs, my wife and her coworkers would turn the lights off, as many lights off as they could in the evening. So
While she was at work?
While she was at work, right. So the idea of a control system that would ramp up light levels, primarily from a financial perspective, right, to get the most productivity out of people, when people are given the opportunity to control their own lighting at nighttime, they want to turn the lights off and be in a comfortable place.
And I would assume the business owner would say, well, we're doing this for safety because we want our employees to be alert so there are no safety issues, right?
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
who knows? And is that right? Is it wrong? Is it good? Is it bad? And who decides these things?
Well, the way that you phrased it sounds as if you think that's their spin. right? And it could be. But who decides these things is who's ever writing the check.
Do you ever see litigation coming?
We were just talking about that,
Interesting.
as a matter of fact. And Michael, I think you're the one that brought up something. You weren't quite clear on how it came about.
Right. Well, and I think we talk about like where we get good information about human-centric lighting and what really is human-centric lighting. If people need to stay continually informed from reliable organizations like the IES, like the IALD, like the USGBC, or WELL, sorry, where was I going with that? Litigation. From a litigation perspective, if people believe that lights are harmful to them, then it opens up the opportunity for almost anything. And even if from the flip side, if we believe we're designing more human-centric lighting or lighting that affects more other physiological parts of us, who knows what people will do or how they will respond. Could they respond negatively?
There also may be a consequence to the research that we do to find out more about this, because once we establish the impacts of light on human health, employers who don't implement a solution for that could face litigation. Sure. So it could happen. We have seen examples already with exterior lighting and people that were afraid that even though it was a very low dosage, low intensity, low exposure time to outdoor lights, they were afraid that the blue was dangerous. And so we saw cities pull out light fixtures, we saw litigation happen, so the precedent is there.
Smart lighting, is that in conflict or is it supportive of human-centric lighting?
I actually think that smart lighting is a way to get to be part of the conversation. And so, owners are requesting smart buildings. And, I think there's a sense that the lighting designer is not part of that conversation. But I think they should embrace that conversation as a way to get more design influence. The old numbers are the 3,300, $3 per square foot annually in energy, $30 in rent and mortgage and maintenance, and $300 per square foot in people costs for a building. And so when you talk about a smart building, I think you need to focus on the people, right? And then also focus on the other maintenance and energy benefits of the space as well.
Yeah, it's not conflicting or supporting necessarily. It kind of depends how it's being used. What are the characteristics? What are the benefits that this product is promising? And at this point, it's so early in the game that we have to substantiate those benefits to know whether even that is having a positive impact.
Mike?
And to carry on what Craig was saying, one of the tricky parts for us is that while a building owner may want the backbone, the smart controls, that doesn't always necessarily roll down to the actual lighting fixture budget. Right. You can have all this intelligence on the back end, but if fixtures aren't enabled to respond, to take advantage of that, that's where it's tricky.
I think actually what might help is the word human-centric lighting. It's becoming more popular and people are talking about it. And the owner may actually be pulling the lighting designer in to talk about human-centric lighting, but it's a great way to bridge over to the smart building conversation and be able to have a more holistic design as well.
How do energy codes affect HCL?
The light.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The lighting subcommittee of 90.1 that writes the Model Federal Building Energy Code, they're very receptive to the comfort and safety of occupants in a building, in terms of HVAC as well as lighting. And if you think of it in HVAC, if people aren't comfortable with the temperature in the building, it may save a lot of energy, but if they don't want to work there, then you're going to have other issues that are tangible and expensive, right? So there's a range that needs to be achieved. Allowances are built in to 90.1 to accommodate for this.
Okay.
So I think the codes can handle it, but again, we need to have the science and the data to support it. The risk that I see in our industry right now is that we aren't united in funding research to make some of these benefits tangible. As long as we're not united to do this for the betterment of the industry, then we risk a problem with the survival of our industry.
Wow. That's a profound statement.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Craig, closing comments?
Yeah, I think to close this out, I think that one of the most important things we can do today is design systems that are flexible. We don't know where the research is going. We don't know what that end result is going to be. And if you're taking the time now to invest in renovations or new construction, design the system to be flexible so that way you may be able to take benefit from what research we have coming in the future. Mike?
Again, good design is always human-centered design, or good lighting design is always human-centered. I'm hopeful that the WELL standard, a lot of the new research, the ongoing research that goes on, gets lighting designers to the table earlier, that we have more direct and open dialogue with clients, and you know, develop the best systems that we can for, or design the best systems that we can for occupants.
Craig was absolutely correct. The IES focuses on light and health through a number of documents. We have a light and health committee specifically that has a new document coming out soon with some specific recommendations. I would encourage people to get involved in this, to influence, you know, our industry through their expertise. And if anybody wonders how to do that, they're free to contact me. I'm not hard to find. And they could certainly reach out also to find out more about the Human Centric Lighting Society, if that's their preference, or if there is someone who's interested in helping to fund some research, joint funding, so that we can substantiate some of these benefits for the betterment of our industry, then again, reach out and I'll be glad to put them in touch with the right people.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good conversation.